you hear me? Okay, great. So yeah, ICQ was the time. That was an amazing opportunity. Today, I want to share a little about how to take an outsider product and kind of make it your own and integrate it successfully. But before that, I want to kind of talk a little bit about how do you kind of, doesn't do the next thing? It doesn't do the next thing. It does. Now it's out. Cool. Okay, so until the presentation gets figured out, can we do the... It just doesn't like me. Okay. We'll get to that. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about my background and a bit my story. I started as an engineer a long, long time ago. It was actually by mistake. I studied math and physics. That's kind of way out there. And the nice thing about math and physics, the first degree, is that you can't work at anything afterwards. It's like an intro degree. It's not useful in any sort of way. But what it does do, it helps you understand how to take any problem and break it apart. And that later on you can apply to anything in life. And the more complex the problem, the more fun it is. And so I found myself kind of traveling through the world of our industry until I found myself as a product manager. I actually chose to go to the admin areas because nobody likes them. They're usually very not sexy. Don't really talk about them a lot. But it gives a lot of opportunities. And throughout this flow of my my career, I had the opportunity to create a lot of different things, a lot of different projects, kind of near the main product. Hackathons and just ideas that you have, or you see something like, I can do that, that could be very easy. And then you go to your product manager and you tell them, look at this cool thing. And they're like, yeah, fine, okay. And they never do that. And so I ended up going to product to do that. And in product, as a product manager, I got to a point where I get a lot of people coming to me with such ideas. And now I want to take them, and I do want to take them inside. I remember that feeling. But also there's a lot of really good ideas there. So this is what we're going to talk about today, is really how you take those amazing ideas that someone else created on top of your product and then integrate them in a way that it's both successful to the product, but also successful to the people that created them. And everybody kind of gets out of it very happy and not bitter and frustrated, which unfortunately is a lot of the time the case. So we start with the usual suspects of how you create a product. Okay, I think everybody here is familiar with that. You have product management, engineers, that's weird, product marketing. You have the idea, we take it through ideation, go, no-go, requirements, development, launching, documentation, maintenance, the whole flow. Okay, and we think we know it all. Then you have everybody that's using your product, okay? They actually know it better than you. They definitely know it better than engineers, okay? They're using it day to day, and they have a ton of ideas. They know what people want. They know what isn't working. They know what isn't working that they can get to work, and they do it. They adapt your product all the time. So what we should take that. So let's take a step back and see what can be outside a product. This is a piece of furniture, okay? This is one of my passions, one of my hobbies. It's an IKEA hack. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of IKEA hacks, but basically IKEA has a lot of very easy or less so furniture to assemble, affordable, but very not customizable, okay? This is what you get. And so people just take those IKEA stuff and they make it their own. This is actually, I did this in my house, not this particular pretty one, but it's a gallery bed. It's a very basic gallery bed with a set of drawers that acts as stairs. So you kind of have this very advanced, cool gallery bed that my kids have destroyed, but it's really cool. Or this is really easy. This is just a shelf. It's just a newsstand turned to the side, gone from the screen, and turned into a shelf. This is a huge community throughout the world. And the amazing thing about it, if you like to browse IKEA catalogs, which I admit I really, really love to do, every once in a while you see that they have new products that beforehand were IKEA hacks. And I don't know if someone actually approached them, but they do look around and see that. I'm sure that they have people that are well aware of this. This is huge. It's like all over Pinterest. There are websites on that. So that is a great example of an outsider product. It builds on top of your core product. It can be very, very easy. It can be more complex, but it can benefit your audience, your customers. And usually you say, why don't they do that? It's really easy. It's really good. Why don't they do that? Why don't they have that in their options? And what happens, unfortunately, most of the times is when it gets to product, we tend to say no. We tend to be kind of the bad guys. It's too complex. It's not enough of a use case. It's not, it's not in your current roadmap, and we will, change the plans, and you don't really, it's kind of, okay, fine. And that also interferes later on with internal communications. If the people that did that are your SEs or your professional services, then later on communication will also be impacted from that. And what they do in their day-to-day, they overcome challenges to get your product out. And now we are that challenge. We are that problem. We'll get to our examples in a minute. But what they don't understand is even if you have the best product, this is the lunar module, okay? It's a very cool product. To get it to the moon, what they don't understand is you have to do this, okay? To get a lunar module to the moon, you have to build an entire infrastructure to launch it, to get it out there, to get it safe, to get them back safe. Okay? This is our life. This is what we do, okay? Organize, talk to all the different processes. And this is what we need to do to take that wonderful idea and get it inside. And that is a lot of the time the reason why we say no, the reason why we don't take it the next step. And the first thing here is also to communicate to them and say, listen, it's not that we don't like your idea. It's amazing. Just take a step back and understand that it's much bigger than just this little thing. How do we do that? So we are going to start evaluating it step by step. A lot of it is very similar to what you would do when you have your own idea and you're trying to sell that to your manager and get it approved. But this time, you already have something that someone gave to you. And before I dive into the specifics here, Sisense is BI platform. And one of the things that we do and we're very proud of is that it's very extendable. There's a lot of APIs, a lot of different things that you can add on top of that. And so a lot of the time, I would say about every other week, I get someone coming to me saying, we did that in an add-on, why don't we add it to the product? A customer did this in this workflow, why don't you add that to the admin area? Why don't you add this one? And so I'm going to start with a little bit, when talking about it, I'm going to take an example of something that might sound not that interesting, not that sexy. It's a configuration for being able to share to limited sections of users your application. Okay? That was an add-on for Sisense for years. It was a very loved add-on. And then we never put it in because it was working and it was fine. And then one day we said, but why aren't we putting it in? Okay? I want it to be a part of my product. And then when I took it, I had to start thinking and evaluating it, not as a nice thing that already works, but as now a feature that I am working on and I'm owning. And the first few questions that you want to ask when you talk about integrating such an outsider product is these 4 questions. So the first thing is how applicable it is. Okay? How much of your user base is actually going to use that? Is there a cool edge case, which might be a good thing, but is it really relevant for everybody? So none of these answers here is a yes and no go, but it's something that you have to take into consideration. The second thing is the utility. Is this something that solves an existing problem, or does it solve a new problem? And if it solves a new problem, is it a problem that you couldn't solve before, or you weren't even aware of? And again, not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but keep it in mind. Then it's the complexity. A lot of the time, the different additions that are done are complex. They are more complex than what you would necessarily do. And you have to understand if it's complex inherently or it's complex because the way it was done. And how complex will it be to integrate it later on? Might be an advanced user capability that you want to have or not. Be aware of that before you take that next step. And lastly, adjacency is if this is in your main domain, or does it take you to a new direction? And taking it to a new direction can be very exciting, but that infrastructure that we talked about a minute ago becomes bigger. So just take that into consideration when you look at that. We asked those questions. You decided to take the next step, and this is what you got. Okay? You get a product. What can you expect when you're about to work on it? This is an example that I found on the internet. Someone actually created, this is very risky in my opinion, but the thing is this, I'm sure it works, maybe for a second, but when you get an outsider product, a lot of the times you'll have one and most of these things here happening to you. It will not have a lot of documentation. It will not have a lot of features. It will use your capabilities, not in the intended way, to be very, very delicate, most likely in a completely different direction that you meant for them to be used. It's not scalable, usually. And in most cases, it would cost more to make this than to buy a normal hairdryer. On the other hand, you will most likely have crazy early adopters that just love it. They will swear by it. They will sell it to you. They are there with that. So you got the good and the bad. But that is a long list of things to handle, and you need to map them and know what they are, again, to be aware of what you need to do later on to get it moving. We understand the problems. We understand the gaps. Do I understand the usage? Okay. Ask the person that brought it to you, do you have usage data? Do you know how many people use it? Do you know what they're using? Do you know if they stopped? Okay? Usually they say, look at that amazing thing. Everybody's using that. Look at how many people I have listed on it. That's great, but are they still on it? Are they still using it? You have to get them to share that information with you. Now, not necessarily they'll have that, okay? Sometimes it's just a cool thing that they created, but it's up to us to try and get that, and if we don't have it now, to see if we can easily, use the fact that it's already out there to get this information and measure it. So that's a great advantage of the fact that it's an actually working product, and we can know, what is being used and what isn't. And now, the easiest part of all, transitioning into core engineering. This is usually the case where a lot of outsider products fail. This is the case for my kind of configuration. We had a lot of problems because what it did, the configuration that we had in the add-on, it was on top of the list of users. So it came out from the, and the end of the road. It kind of filtered it out. But when I gave it to my engineers and I asked them, I wanted it to be inside the product, and it's working. It's like a 5-minute thing, right? No, because they had to completely re-architecture it. They had to go to the backend, to the database entry point, and filter it there, and that's something different. It takes different times, not necessarily longer, but different times. And it's a completely different way to approach it. And it's critical that core engineering, your engineers will take that and design it on their own. And there are several reasons for that. The first one being that they will have to maintain it later on. So they need to own that, they need to know that, they need to trust it, and this is only going to happen if they design it. Now, part of the design, they might take what was done, but it's their call. Not your call and not the call of the person who created that. And part of it will be to take some of these crazy modifications that were done and might turn them into actual features, which is cool. But again, not your call, engineering's call. What you do need to do is you need to consider all the customers. Also the ones that are not going to use that, the ones that will be impacted by it. Is it going to kind of jump in their faces and now be available to them even if they don't want it? You need to provide your engineers all the use cases, the way you do it for any feature you work on. Don't stop at the feature that was presented to you. Take that step back and give them the full scope. And then you need to prioritize. When you get an outsider product, you get 2 lists of backlog, okay? So you get the original creator's backlog, and you get your own backlog. Actually, 3, you get the engineer's backlog, because they have to tell you that needs to be created from scratch, and you need to build the whole infrastructure for that. And it's like this huge list that is not realistic. And the thing is that you want to get it to be the same product. It's not even a new feature. You need to get it to the same spot. So that crazy list is too big. So just ruthlessly prioritize. Just take the list and cut it in half, and then cut it again, and then cut it again until you get to something that is very, very minimal, that is actually doable. It's also a point in which you sometimes understand that it's too big, okay? But when you understand that it's too big here, it comes with reasoning, and it's easier to get the no in that way. But do ruthlessly prioritize, like to no end, like 10% maybe keep. And then celebrate your team. We'll get to that at the end, but the team here is 2 teams. It's the team who created it and the team that is going to own it now. And a lot of the time in this transition, you have your engineers starting to diss on the people that created it to begin with, okay? This is crap, we'll build it the right way. You don't want to do that, okay? You don't want to get them head to head. We'll get to that more. You transition to core engineer, you have to document it. That's part of the fun. Documentation, as stated before, is not easy, and it's an art in my mind. But the nice thing here is you have the people who created it originally. Get them to talk to your technical writers. Don't assume that you can explain it better than the person who thought about it to begin with. So do that connection. You'll save yourself some time. You make people happy. You'll get good documentation. And now that once we created this great product, we need to relaunch it. And I'm going to say that again. It's relaunching because it's already out there. With all its baggage, with all its talks, with everything that people expect. And relaunching a product is something that can go terribly wrong. And you start the same way you start with launching a product, okay? You set your targets, your KPIs, your measurements, your tracking, whatever. That's basically the same thing. Change the name. First thing you do after you set your target is change the name. It can be a small nuance. So our add-on was called Limit Autocomplete, which is very catchy, I have to say. I use it myself. I keep on taking a step back and saying, I'm not going to use that name anymore. And it was now a configuration in the system. So a configuration in the system doesn't really get to have a name. It's not an add-on. But it was kind of slightly adjusted to limit sharing users. Yeah, there's a later explanation that it's not the same name. It's not Limit Autocomplete. Limit Autocomplete was a cool add-on. This is something else. And it's super important because people have baggage. Products have baggage. You have the people who love it, and they're going to be disappointed because you changed it. There's going to be the people who hate it. They're not going to try it because it's the same name. Okay? So you don't want that. You want a clean slate, change the name. We go back to the things we usually do, okay? What's the value? Now, this is one you get easy because you had to explain the value to yourself when you decided to take it on. So you already did most of the work here. Now you just need to formulate it to everybody else. And you have to tell them. The thing with relaunching is a lot of time you don't tell them because it's already there, right? People are using that wrong. First of all, we changed the name. It's not the same feature. But you have to say that. You have to celebrate that. You have to announce it. You have to let people know that you did something. Also to get the people involved, be more motivated to get it forward. But also because it requires, recognition. People spend work on this. It's a feature that you created, Let it be known. And let's go back to the people aspect of that. At the end of the day, we build products. We work with people, okay? We go to the office or to Zoom, and we talk to them, and we want to have good communication with them. And as a product, you really want to have good communication with anybody in your field. And transitioning such a product inside can be a place where people get very, very emotional and very angry. Because for them, for the person who created that, this is their baby. This is their idea, their creation. They want to see it, happen. They want to see it there, but they're attached to it. And you can't just take it away and make it yours. You have to acknowledge that they're a part of that, and you have to acknowledge their idea and support. And it's not that complex. It's as simple as, doing an internal launch and saying, thanks for this and that created that great idea. That's it. It's not that crazy. You want to take it a step further, involve them in your thoughts. You thought that part of it was great, but you want to change something. Let them know why you want to change them. It's not that you need their approval, but it's nice, to tell them to have that involved. Let them be part of launching that. Let them be part of celebrating that. And that can get you, your people, to be more involved, to come to you even more, and actually also to be able to accept your rejection of their future suggestions in the future, because it's not an automatic no. It has merit behind it because they've seen it, you do it before. And that's something that is super important in order to get a product group and a product initiative going and moving forward and advancing. And also to help you recognize the fact that we don't have all the ideas, okay? We actually have very few ideas, and a lot of it comes from the outside, and we're not even aware of that, because this is how communities work, and this is how people work. And once you celebrate those people and you embrace that, then you grow that. And if you don't do that, you will lose good people. And unfortunately, I've had the cases on which I took on someone's project, and I got so into that I completely forgot about them. And then kind of a year later, I met up with them, and they were furious at me. They were like really, really mad. We got into an argument, like, you took my project and you completely changed it around and you didn't even talk to me. And I wasn't even aware, of that. And that is not something that we want to be at. We don't want to have that bitterness inside. So celebrate the people, celebrate the product, and remember that we are really not the smartest people here, and everybody have great ideas. And, have those products inside. They're amazing things that you can add, and usually they're not as complex as building an air dryer from cardboard. And they can really take you and your product to the next level. So thank you.
Wow, I have so many thoughts. I'm just writing everything down here. So again, jump into Slido with your questions. You can submit those there, or we'll do hands. While we're waiting, okay, so first of all, some people do care about the admin area. Just to be clear, thank you so much. You never know when the admin of an app is going to be at the table where they're deciding whether or not to keep buying your app. So
they usually are, and they keep getting forgotten. Yeah.
Don't just give your admins sticks. Give them carrots, too. You want happy admins. Also, mentioning the people who work internally on the product or know it better, like sales engineers, for example. I was so afraid of sales at one point. They know everything.
I get most of my ideas, actually, from talking to our sales engineers. It's an amazing fountain of knowledge and really of adoption. They can tell you what's being used, what's not being used, and what's missing faster than any tracking capabilities that you have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, two constants in the world: IKEA hacks are awesome, and kids will destroy them. Also, this just in from Product Alliance Legal Department: they are not held responsible for any accidents that may occur based on your cardboard blow dryer. And then you have to document it. Music to my ears. Thank you so much. All right, we have a question in here. So, what efforts are you making to align your business objectives with a technological solution?
For the outsider products, I would say in the very beginning, when you look at the list of, of those parameters of how it's related to your current audience, your current business, this is where you have to do that. This is where you have to understand if this is aligned to your business goals, if this is something that takes you forward with them or, gets you stronger in that area. And usually this is the first place that it will fall. If it's completely unrelated or it, diverts your attention from your business goals, this is the place to stop. And this is also why that's the first thing to ask, is this relevant to what I'm doing now? And then after that, it's more of a technicality. So that's the point to do that. And it usually can come with the first conversation that you have. Like someone will come to you and say, I created this, flow that is very, I have customers that use it and we should integrate it to the system. And then just, start asking them those, famous whys, like why is it good for us? And who's going to use it? And how do you know that it's relevant for anybody else? And start drilling with them in that conversation with your business goals in mind. A lot of times they will, at the end of the conversation, if it's not relevant, they will come to you and say, you know what? Never mind. I get that. It's not it. So this is how this is how I do it.
Awesome. So what tools do you use to measure all the things you need to measure?
Well, I use iSense.
Ah.
So it's kind of a plug. Yeah.
We'll slip you the 10 pounds. Just stand up. What efforts are you making? Do you set aside capacity on your team to account for these sort of outside skunkworks projects?
We try. It's really hard to kind of balance it. We have teams that are more, I would say, kind of production-oriented, that have capacity to integrate smaller things. For the bigger ones, they sometimes transition to big projects. We have one now that started as a demo. It's called, it's an infusion app, and it's now part of our roadmap. Okay, it got a big chunk of capacity. So it really depends on the scale of the product. But we do have allocated some smaller capacity for the quick wins more to get inside.
Awesome. You had a question?
Yeah, when you're explaining the value to users, do you mention the add-on that feature was based on?
No.
So you market it as a...
No.
The question, just for the recording, when you're reintroducing or re-releasing the add-on, do you explain to people where that add-on came from?
No, as a straight off, it's very risky to talk about what was previously done, and you do want to detach it. You can do that at a later stage. When people start to use it more and when you have more face-to-face conversations, then you can say, well, remember that add-on? Now it's part. But when you really talk about it, just put it aside, okay? It had its time, but you really want to have a clean slate there. It's otherwise it's very risky.
Okay, so you have your core product team, and then you have your skunkworks.
Yeah.
Your skunkworks project team.
Yeah.
Blah. Could you talk a little bit more about the makeup of those separate teams and sort of the roles that you see being the same, being different?
So skunkworks specifically was a dedicated team. It was a labs team. So they had everything that they needed. I don't know if you have labs team, but they usually have their own kind of business unit. They will have their product aspects, their engineers. But a lot of the times it's not a dedicated team. It's someone doing something on their own or two people together. A customer will have their team working on that. So you can't really predefine what will be that type of team, that will be that type of product. And that is also part of why you get this with a long list of gaps, because you might have a very engineering, very core, functionality team, and we got ideas that came from business and were amazingly beautiful, but it was just like, on the surface. Now you have to build it all, so you don't really know what you're getting. That's part of the challenge here, is that you don't really know what the gap will be. And then it's up to us to define it and then tailor it to the correct team to do it for integrating.
So this just in a question from my brain.
Okay.
So at K15T, we've broken into self-organized teams. So it's like kind of like everything skunkworks projects. One of the things that we struggle with, or we're learning, is the positive way to say that, is migration, right? So we have these old, we build Confluence apps or Jira apps. So it's like there's the old server platform, moving to a new platform, right? You talked about changing the name, which is huge. But how do you market or signal to users, hey, you're using this old and busted thing, or our professional services team wrote a custom version of this for you, switch. How do you do that?
I can have a whole presentation on migrations, so we're not going to do that, but I would love to have that if anybody wants to talk about it. Migration is a huge feature on its own. Mapping correctly how you take and what you take from a previous setup to a new setup, what's important for the user, what's important for you, is very delicate, and it's something that you can't really do offhand. Like people will say, I'll do a script for that. It usually will, the 20% that the script will miss is most likely the 80% important information. And so I sometimes, even though I do and I create migration tools, I sometimes stop and say, you know what? For a one-off transition, do it manually. It's not necessarily sound like the best suggestion, but sometimes it's better to just say, take 2 days, sit in front of the computer side by side and move it to the next one. It'll be worth the time because the new thing is so much better, but creating that migration tool that will catch every single edge case, you can create a whole company doing that. So
maybe you write the script and then you set up an AMA for those 20 people that are super upset.
And then you maintain and support that script for years, so don't. It's very delicate.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Let's give one more round of applause for thank you so much.